I'm Elouise and I'm part of the maths team here at the University of Wolverhampton. Today in this video we're going to be going through some quadratics. So topics such as what are quadratics, factorising quadratics, the quadratic formula and how to graph quadratics. So what are quadratics? They're any form of equation in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And your a, your b and your c can be any numbers. So there could be whole numbers such as these. They could be negative numbers. Okay, any of them at all can be negative. You can have a combination. They can be decimals, surds, fractions. You can even have 0 as one of your numbers. So in this instance, our b is 0. And in this instance, our c is 0. What you can't have is your a being 0, because for a quadratic you need that x squared term. So how do we factorise quadratics? Well, if we had x squared plus x minus 20, how would we factorise that? So for two brackets we'd have an x plus p and an x plus q, where p and q are some random numbers that we're not quite sure of yet. Now, if we unfactorise that and expanded it all out, we'd get this equation, x squared plus px plus qx minus pq. Now, it takes you a while to get your head around this, but just have a little look, and hopefully you can see that when you expand out the brackets, you need to be able to add the p and the q together to make the term in front of the x, and you need to be able to multiply them to make the pq term. So I'm going to start with what multiplies together to make minus 20. Well, you can do minus 1 times 20, but if we add those together, we get 19. So in that instance, we'd have 19x, but we want a 1x, so it's not that combination. We could have a 1 and a minus 20, but they add together to make minus 19. So you go through and you find all of the different combinations that could make this C number our minus 20. We could have minus 2 and 10, 2 and minus 10, minus 4 and 5, and 4 and minus 5. But the only combination that multiplies together to make minus 20, but adds together to make 1, is minus 4 and 5, as illustrated in the table. And I do find it really handy to make a table such as these, especially when you're starting out. So this is how we would factorise that quadratic. And this is really helpful, especially when you're graphing quadratics and solving quadratics. So it's a skill you're going to be able to develop over time. So how about if we had a more tricky quadratic where a wasn't 1? For instance, this one where a is 9. Well, we could get 9x squared by having a 3x in one bracket and a 3x in another bracket, because 3 times 3 is 9. But it could also be a 9 in a bracket and a 1 in the other bracket. So now we have to do a lot of different comparisons, and it can get lengthy. Okay, so if our brackets were 2 3s, we could multiply together to make this plus 6 at the end, which is our C, a 1 and a 6, a minus 1 and a minus 6, a 2 and a 3, and a minus 2 and a minus 3. It's really easy to forget that you can have two negatives multiplying together to make a positive when you have a positive C. So don't forget to check those ones too. Okay? But when we add them together, we'll have 3p and 3q. If you expand out those brackets on this page here, you'll hopefully be able to see where that comes from. We get 21, minus 21, 15, and minus 15. But we want a minus 20, so it's none of those. And we go through the same process. How could we get a positive 6? A 1 and a 6, 6 and a 1. You go through all of these here, and then you add them together. And hopefully we can see that the combination that gives us a plus 6 for our C and a minus 20 is our 9x minus 2 and an x minus 3. These ones are super tricky, so take your time and keep practicing with them. So now we have the quadratic formula, which is this big one here. So x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. The little plus minus sign there means that there's two different possibilities for answers. You could have the plus b squared minus 4ac, or you could have the minus one. So whenever we solve a quadratic, we always get two answers. And that's that illustrated there. So if we wanted to solve this quadratic, maybe it doesn't factorise very nicely, we could use quadratic formula instead. Okay, so we highlight what our a, b and our c is. And again, our a is the number in front of the x squared, our b is the number in front of the x, and our c is the digit at the end. Now it's very, very, very important to remember if it's positive or negative. So in this instance, our b is minus 4. So you need to make sure that when you're plugging it into the formula, you remember to use that minus. Okay, so we've plugged it all in here, and now it looks big and complicated and messy, but we can definitely get it a little bit nicer looking. So we've got a minus and a minus 4. Well, a minus is a positive. Minus 4 all squared. So minus 4 times minus 4 is 16. Okay, and we go through, you can put it all in your calculator if you want. So we get a much nicer looking one, which is x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 812 over 14. So we have the one option where it's plus, and we have the one option where it's negative. We put those both in our calculators and we get our values of x. So how would we graph them? Well, it's really important to be able to identify what a graph should look like without having to sketch it out. So this is what a quadratic looks like with a positive a and a negative a. What it looks like when a is small, so as you can see it's stretched here, and when a is big, it's more squished. When b is positive, it's over on the left-hand side, and when it's negative, it's over on the right. When b is small, it's more squished up, and when b is big, it's more squished down. Okay, and c, if that's positive, it moves it up the y-axis, and when c is negative, it moves it down the y-axis. Your c is called your y-intercept. So whatever your c is where it will cross on the y-axis. Okay, so what if we wanted to graph this quadratic? Well, the steps that I would take is to factorise it first. So if you want to go back and look at the factorising steps, you can. But the way I'd factorise it is y equals 2x plus 5 in one bracket and x plus 4 in the other bracket. And then you can set y equal to 0 and solve for x. So we set our y equal to 0, and we have a 2x plus 5 equals 0. Well, we can use our algebra skills to rearrange this of 2x equals minus 5 and then x equals minus 2.5. And then we have our other bracket, which is x plus 4 equals 0. And again, we use our algebra skills to rearrange this for x equals minus 4. Now, how does this help us with plotting? Well, we have a coordinates. We have, when y is 0, x is minus 2.5, which is a coordinate. The x coordinate comes first and the y coordinate comes second. And then we have our other coordinates. When y is 0, x is minus 4. So again, the minus 4 comes first in the bracket and the 0 comes second in the bracket. And then to get our third point to plot, we can set x equal to 0 and solve for y. So wherever there's an x in here, you want to change that x for a 0. And remember, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So we have 2 multiplied by 0 squared, which all just goes to 0. 13 multiplied by 0, which again just goes to 0, and then you're left with plus 20, which if you remember is our c and is our y-intercept. So it makes sense that our coordinates for this would be when x equals 0, y equals 20, because that's where it's going to cross on the y-axis. So hopefully this should enable you to graph the quadratic. And that's everything for this video. Please make sure to look at the other mathematics videos if you need any help with other areas.